just keep asking yourself this one question. When is the last time you did something for the first time?
Mm.
And if you don't remember the last time you did something for the first time, it's high time you do something now.
Mm.
Because that is one way, if somebody wants to get out of the introvert zone to do something, is look for something you've never done.
I feel you can only be inspiring as a leader if you're inspired yourself.
Welcome to another episode of the PeopleHum interview series. I'm your host Sumita Mariam, and let's begin with a quick introduction of PeopleHum. PeopleHum is an end-to-end, one-view integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award for HCM that is specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work. We run the PeopleHum blog and video channel, which receives upwards of 200,000 visitors a year, and publish around 2 interviews with well-known names globally every month. And now for our guests. Gatik, Chaujer and Sandra are the founders of Transforme Learning and Leadership Solutions. Together, through leadership coaching and facilitation, they serve their clients, which includes Google, the United Nations, Accenture, McKinsey, and many others. Born with the purpose to enable teams, people, leaders, and organizations to make change happen, Transforme is a global award-winning leadership development company. We are very happy to interview its founders on our series today. Welcome, Gatik and Sandra. We are so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Sumita. We're also equally excited to be here.
Thank you, Sumita, for having us.
It's absolutely our pleasure. I mean, it's such a honor to see both of you sitting right there. So thank you for coming. And let's move on to our questions now. And my very first question. Tell us a little bit, about your journey together that brought you to Transforme.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, that's a question that we get asked quite often. So I'll start off talking about what my journey has been and how Sandra and my journey really converged is what Sandra can add on to. So I have a background in traditional learning and development. And I've been in this space for about 20 years now. So 10 years back, having been in this space for about 10 years, I was doing a lot of work in learning and development in traditional classroom training till I discovered through a pretty chance incident. I was sent off to the US to attend a leadership seminar, a 10-day leadership seminar, and I went with a big chip on my shoulder, assuming and thinking that I knew it all. But those chips were very quickly chiseled away over the next 3 or 4 days. And those 10 days were a hugely, deeply transformational experience for me. And I discovered that, there are deeper methodologies out there through which real transformation can happen, because it happened for me. Because on the 3rd or the 4th day of the seminar, I quit smoking. On the 7th or the 8th day, I quit alcohol. And the 9th or the 10th day, I started running, and I made a resolve to run every day, something that I kept up for many, many years after that. Even now, I'm fairly health conscious, even though I don't run every day, but that's when it all started. So having experienced these shifts for myself made me realize that there are methods beyond the traditional learning approaches that I was used to that can make change happen. And that really that really started me off on this journey. And along the way, I guess, I worked with 2 different coaches working on me, working with me. So that was quite an interesting experience. Even before I became a coach, I had 2 coaches who were coaching me. I had a mentor who helped me a lot in this journey, and I discovered things around group process work. I discovered things around what cognitive behavior therapy, what REBT is. And some of these deep processes is what, because I experienced for myself, I realized that there is a huge opportunity for us to take it out there and help many, many, many other people who want to bring about some change, especially in the corporate context. Because I also realized that leaders needed a lot of help, because the higher you go up, the more lonely it gets, the more challenging it gets, the more ambiguous it gets. And that's where things start getting a little fuzzy, and we need to start working on ourselves. So it's really armed with that desire that I set off on this journey, that I decided to set off on this journey. And I'm going to take a quick pause here, because this was my journey. And, it's quite interesting how Sandra's and my journey kind of coincided at the same time. So I'll let you add on to that.
Yeah, this is like the movie where you have parallel tracks of protagonists happening, and then we kind of converge. So this is now my track that I'm going to talk about. Gatik had an interesting, unique, but he did a lot of work with people development for 20 years. And for example, I used to always tell Gatik, you're so lucky you found your love early in life. So he got into training when he was in his early 20s, and he absolutely loved the work that he was doing. I, on the other hand, struggled to find what my calling was. So I didn't have any experience in L&D. I did all my work around operations, Six Sigma, quality, business development, different organizations. I kind of tried all the cuisine, and I didn't know what my favorite cuisine was. That frustrated the heck out of me. Because I was lost. I didn't know what I was meant to do. I knew I was not going to keep trying these cuisines for the rest of my life. And it took me 13 years to do that. And I said, this is scary. Now, what am I meant to do? And then I went into the phase where it just kind of dips. The whole bit started dipping for me. I started losing myself. I couldn't find what my calling was, or purpose was. I couldn't find a career that would not be a career for me, but just a lifestyle journey for me. And then I got into the space of self-discovery, self-reflection, high levels of frustration, which eventually brought me to what I love doing, which was coaching people, life coaching, just doing things for them without, planning this whole bit of how the future looks like. And when I finally got my calling, and this was, I was sitting in a life coaching training program, and I had tried everything, all kinds of roles, all kinds of organizations, all kinds of geographies as well. And and I was lost. When I sat in the life coaching training, I felt this huge sense of relief that I finally found something. After 2 years of struggle, I finally found what I was meant to do. And that was the same time what Gatik was talking about when he went through his lab process and self-reflection and his need to do things for people. And I found this around the same time, about a few months here and there. And then we got down together. We said, hey, this is beautiful. We both found something to do, but what do we do with it? Let's create something starting for ourselves and then take it out for people. There could be so many people out there who need that kind of support, who need coaches, who need people who can get clarity in life. So that's where the name Transform Me was born also, because transformation starts from within. And this is the name that Gatik came up with. The transformation starts from me, and I need to transform before I can enable others. And that's the story that started off on our dining table. To now different geographies. We have offices in different countries. We have people, we have clients who we've enjoyed just doing this journey with.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, how you guys, just found out your calling and came together to do it for a greater purpose. That's amazing. And my next question is for the both of you, if you want to answer. But we read a little bit about Gatik that you were initially a very introverted person. So it would be an inspiration to understand how you transformed yourself and what helped you the most.
Yeah, I often start off by telling people that my journey is the journey of a shy, underconfident, low self-esteem ridden boy to becoming a twice TEDx speaker, to becoming a public speaker, storytelling coach, and a leadership development facilitator. And it's been quite interesting. And I never would have thought in my late teens or even in my early adulthood that this is what I would have been doing. I really never thought that this was possible. And that's something I tell a lot of youngsters, that a lot of things are possible, no matter how impossible they seem.
Yeah.
My transform, I wouldn't even call it transformation. My journey of evolution really is about, so yes, all through my growing up years, more than shy and underconfident, which was certainly what I was, I think my biggest enemy as through my growing up years was this feeling that I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
And this feeling was my bigger enemy than my shyness or my underconfidence, right? This sense that I'm always compared, whether people were comparing me or not, but this sense that I'm always compared, led me to this, face this villain in my life, which is I'm not good enough, right? And my journey has really been about fighting this enemy of mine of I'm not good enough. And the way I did it is, actually I did less. Others helped me quite a bit in my initial years. And I still remember how I got into training, and that's also a connected story between Sandra and me. So Sandra and I have known each other for about 20 years now, a little over 20
Yeah.
years now. And I remember when I was working in my first job, there was a position open for a trainer, and many of my friends applied for that position, but I didn't. I didn't because I wasn't good enough. Remember? And that's the time I remember Sandra having a conversation with me 20 years back, asking me this question that why didn't you apply? And I just kind of told her that, look at all these people who are applying. There's this guy who's so confident and he plays the guitar and he speaks so well. And there's this guy who's, great with people and uses humor and everybody likes him. And there's this lady who's so good at doing this. And, where do I stand a chance? And it was Sandra really who inspired me back then, saying that, if there's anybody who I feel should get this, it's you, and you're better than most people or as good as most people. So I don't remember the details of that conversation that we had in that auto rickshaw, but I do remember feeling very, very inspired, and that's when I did apply, and I did become a trainer. But that did not take that feeling away. That feeling was still there, but now it was even a bigger challenge because now I found myself amongst the best of the best. Right? Earlier, the challenge was different. I could say that I'm not good enough and get away with it. But now I was there and I was with all these trainers who were really top of their game. And this feeling would keep coming back again and again and again. And I still remember there was one incident where in my initial years, there was a team party and all trainers were there. And I was the one trainer who was bullied a fair bit. When I say bullied, I mean leg pulling and all happened quite a bit. And I became the target for many people. And the reason was that I would rarely speak up, and challenge others or stop them. And that night I was quite frustrated with what had happened. And I remember, somewhere making the resolve that if I'm not good enough, I will make myself good enough. And if I'm not born with it, I will compensate for it by working hard towards it. And that's really what I did. I just kind of, the moment I got into training, I just deep dived into that subject so much. I remember even today, research is one of my most favorite things to do. I just love researching, reading books, figuring out new approaches, new things about human behavior that are happening. And that's something that started early on because I said that if I'm not born with it, I will learn it, right? And as I learned whatever I learned, the second thing that I did is that I used to experiment a lot. I used to push myself to do different things. I remember 15, 16 years back, I used to do things that people hadn't heard of and they'd say, this is kind of odd as an approach. I'd say, yeah, maybe it is, but let me experiment with it. So I experimented quite a bit and that means I failed quite a lot and I learned what not to do to fail, which was great. And I kept refining things. So I think these three things have become my mantra for doing whatever you want to do. And I call it, discover, experiment, and refine. Because that's what I did. Discover, so keep discovering, keep experimenting, keep refining. Discovering is about learning new things, researching, understanding, asking for feedback, discovering yourself, discovering the subject that you're passionate about. That's discover. And once you discover, a lot of people do discovery, but few people do the second step, which is experiment. Now go out there and challenge yourself. Try something new. Try a different way of doing things and see what's working, what's not working. Right? So I experimented quite a bit and started experimenting fairly early on. And the third is really refine. After you experiment, take the feedback seriously. Yeah. If you're getting feedback from your clients, from your stakeholders, take it seriously and figure out how is it that you can become better. So for me, it's really been, and even today, when whether Sandra and I are doing a leadership lab, a transforming lab, or if you're doing workshops on storytelling or anything, it's really about this. It's about continuing to discover, continuing to experiment, and then refining whatever we're doing. So that's really been my journey, and that's what I continue to hold very close to my heart because it's really helped me in my toughest times. And that's really my mantra today. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Sandra, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that works really well for both of us is we are so much alike in some areas and so different in some areas as well, which is wonderful for healthy conflict as well. But introvert, we are completely alike. In fact, I think I was really far behind in the introvert cycle to even step up. Gatik had, at times the courage to experiment and do it. It took me for a long time even to get that stage of experiment. Like, I don't need to experiment. Everything is going fine in my life. This introvertness is, helping me keeping me safe. So I'm pretty much fine. And I think we've been able to hold each other accountable and push each other to get out of the zone. But one mantra that I tell myself, and if there's any introvert that I want to give this advice, it is just keep asking yourself this one question. When is the last time you did something for the first time? And if you don't remember the last time you did something for the first time, it's high time you do something now. Because that is one way, if somebody wants to get out of the introvert zone to do something, is look for something you've never done. Because that will bring up all your emotions, all your fears. You have the conversation with that, you have your conflict with it, and when you eventually do it, and we're not talking about success here, we're not talking about being perfect or doing it well, we're just talking about doing it for an introvert. If you do it, that's your success. And I think that's what's helped us also look for opportunities that we've never done. So we've had people who call us to do unique new stuff, come as a panelist online or judge somewhere or speak on some topic. And my answer is yes for everything. And yes, not so that I can be everywhere. It is for me to take care of the battle inside me that keeps pulling me back into this introvert zones. I need to do it. I need to do something new so that I can start feeling comfortable with myself now.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's so many stories, but I won't bore you with those stories right now.
There are a lot of key takeaways from whatever you guys just said, because Gatik was telling about good feedback. And I think, the mind to accept feedbacks is something that all of us need. And, trying something new is also, especially during these times, a lot of people are coming forward to try out new things. So that's wonderful advice. And let's focus a little bit on your, coaching part of it. And is there a particular method that works more effectively to solve organizational problems worldwide?
So we can both share our perspectives on this one, perhaps. But I wish there was one methodology that could solve for all the organizational problems worldwide. I wish we had a solution like that, but I just believe it's always different strokes for different folks or different strokes for different organizations, different realities. With that being said, Sumita, I also feel that there's some common threads for sure. And I think the challenges and the realities are becoming more common now than they were earlier. So earlier, things were very, very separate for different organizations, different industries and all. But today you look at it, the lines are blurring. The challenges and realities for most organizations are becoming similar. I mean, classic case in point is the situation that we're in. Barring a few industries for whom the realities are very, very different, most of us are in one bucket, right? And the challenges are very similar for all of us. And I think that's really changed over the last, that change has happened over the last decade or so, or little over a decade. And I think the realities and the challenges of most organizations are similar to the extent of the fact that there's higher ambiguity. There is higher complexity. There is higher uncertainty. Add to that the fact that world over organizations have been wanting to do well. There's also been a lot of talent coming in. So therefore, you have a lot of leaders, a lot of people who are now finding themselves in leadership roles. And for many people, it's the largest role of their lives at the same time, right? So all of this is happening at a very interesting time. And while we're all talking about change, the interesting thing is that it's really the pace of change that's really hit us, right? And that's common for everybody, right? Now, while we all get this, and I'm trying to get to your question of, is there a methodology that can solve for problems that everybody's facing? So I'm laying out first the realities and the problems that exist everywhere, or largely everywhere. And to that, I think the underpinning thing of all of this, what is happening really with this complexity, with this ambiguity, with this uncertainty, with this rate of change, with new leaders becoming leaders, all of this happening is leading to a space where people at a self level are struggling more than ever. At a self level, people are struggling. They're not struggling just at a skill or competence level, or, it's not about skill and competencies anymore when it comes to these things, right? People are struggling at an internal level. They're struggling with becoming strong internally, becoming resilient emotionally. Um, Everybody's emotional state is a lot more heightened with all of this happening, right? And that's common for everybody. And therefore, what I think we need to do, and that's what Transforming has been doing for a long time, is really helping people uh, transform from within. Like we spoke earlier about the concept of Transform Me is building resilience from within, making people strong from within, enable and strengthen teams while working on themselves, enable leaders while working on themselves. Uh, and to that, I think the methodologies that we believe are important and which we see clients recognizing now. 7-8 years back it was a different situation, but more and more clients, more and more organizations are now asking us to do reflective work. They're asking us to do deep self-awareness, emotional resilience related work, which is what Transform Me has been doing for the last 8-10 years, right? And we have something that we call Transform Me Labs, which is a process that we've created, which is a mix of a couple of methods that we've gained mastery over, not just Sandra and me, but our extended team as well, whether it's Gestalt, which Sandra follows, to systemic coaching or T group. And we've created our own methodology of all of these, which we call our own kind of blended cocktail, which we have the secret sauce for. And that's really about doing this deep reflective work and strengthening leaders and teams from within. So that's one methodology that really is required. The second thing I think that's required is taking a more systemic approach to solving organizational challenges. And the third and the last thing that I would say is start early. Start early. The one thing that every organization needs to focus on is starting early. And when I say start early, it means in terms of time and in terms of level of leaders. In terms of time, for example, I was reading a post by a client of mine who put down a very compelling thought around the fact that change managers for long have been brought in when the change is being announced, which is quite silly if you ask me, because change managers should come in when you start thinking about the change. That's where we need to start early, right? Similarly, start early to me also means with levels. So we need to start focusing on the young leaders, right? We've been focusing on senior leaders. Everybody focus on senior leaders. It's important and we should continue doing that. But it's really this approach of building inner resilience, inner strength, awareness, and ability to deal with failure, all of that, we need to start working with the youngsters who are going to be leaders of tomorrow. So those, I think, are the three things really. Taking a more, what I would call a Transform Me Labs kind of approach, doing deep reflective work, taking a systems approach to things, and starting early. Those are my thoughts on this methodology.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. I was just, when you were talking about, I was just reflecting, and when Sumita asked that question as well, one of our leaders had said this about our program. So we had run a leadership development program for a very large organization. And so one of our programs called the BLP, which is a Breakthrough Leadership Program. And he said, this is a legacy builder for our organization. Yeah. And what we did in that, all we did was, Gatik talked about these labs. So we get people in this lab, have reflective, deep conversations. There are two things we focus on: trust and accountability. And when I reflect what we need most in organizations right now, with whatever's happening in our mindset, whatever's happening in the world outside, so uncertain, is we need to have trust, not only just in ourselves and organizations as well. So it's very critical for organizations to build that, whether it's through communication, whether it's being authentic, vulnerable. And second is be accountable. So what do we do now? What can I do now? Each one of us. And that's the kind of work we did in that program for leaders to say it's a legacy builder, or they've never experienced something like that. And when you touch people's hearts, you see change happen. You see permanent behavior changes happening. You'll see them living it. You'll see them doing it. There is a lot of benefit on the cognitive neuroscience. It's very important. We need to have the knowledge, but sometimes you can have all of it and do nothing with it. That's where the heart comes in place. And I think that's been our little magic ingredient where we try and touch that bit in all the work that we do.
And that's so one of the things that we talk about, that's we when we work with people from a method perspective, for long, people have been focusing neck up, right? Working on the cognitive, the thinking, the skill. Uh, and we don't just work neck down. I think we work neck up and neck down because the connection is really, really important. And that's where the change really happens. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was a wonderful answer. And as I listen to you, I understand, where transforming is taking people, because you have a fine balance between the two of you in, certain areas. So that's working wonderfully even for the interview. So thank you so much, for having that chemistry there. And my next question, so as we talk about young leaders, etc., so we are in a global pandemic right now, and it is a crisis for many organizations. So we've had people tell us that, organizations with pre-existing conditions are more risky. So keeping all that in mind, how can you help first-time leaders in this area? What are some key points that, we can note?
Yeah. And you okay
Go
if I
ahead.
take this up first? And we get a lot of these concerns as well in our profiles, people reaching out that what do we do now? What are the next steps? And we're coaching also leaders, entrepreneurs, CEOs who are in that kind of space. And from my experience, what's happening right now is I see or at least the leaders that I'm coaching who are doing a really good job is they follow a 4-step approach. I think the first stage where most of us find ourselves is either in the denial stage or being overwhelmed. So either I've heard like in April leaders saying, India's doing really well in holding on to coronavirus, or Australia's doing really well in maintaining coronavirus. So it's not going to impact our businesses too much. And it's going to be fine. We'll jump out faster. We're not like China or US or the countries who are really struggling with the virus. I sometimes feel that that's in a denial stage where you're saying that no, it's not going to impact us so much because you want to hold on to the status quo so much. Or you also have the other set like, oh my God, it's going to be the biggest depression of the century, which maybe it is, but nothing is going to happen. We're going to solve this business and it's going to hit all employees. So I think that's the first stage, which is a very emotional stage that we need to look at. And as first time managers, we can get stuck in this first stage.
Yeah.
Either denial or overwhelm, and we won't know how to come out of it, which is really bad for the organization, people in it. Once we are able to solve this, I think the second stage is acceptance. Acceptance with reality. Now, acceptance is if I'm in an overwhelmed stage, I need to know what is my acceptance. Is my acceptance going to be, oh, this is the Great Depression? Or it's going to be the acceptance of this is the way it is. What can I do about it? So in both cases, acceptance should be more on the lines of movement. It takes me to move somewhere and not be stuck in the first stage. Once we get a good sense of acceptance and reality, and that's what some of the leaders that I've been coaching are doing, they've put everything, charted the whole bit out, they had to change the entire products, the strategy, then they start setting directions for the team. Now this has happened, this is the situation, so what is the direction I need to see my organization move or my team move, at least in the short term? So next 6 months, how do we sustain? So setting that bit of direction. And the last step is, now I've set direction for my people. Now how do I ensure they do it or follow it? Because your team also could be sitting on the denial and overwhelm stage, the step one. That's when your role as a leader comes in, is how do you inspire them to take you towards a direction or go with you in that direction. So I've seen a lot of leaders do these 4 steps so beautifully, get from step 1 to step 2 fast, from denial overwhelm to accepting, and then setting direction, inspiring. And all of this can only happen, it may seem very simple, it's not, it's if you work on emotional resilience.
Yeah.
Because even when you're moving forward, you set direction, inspiring others, you could just be sucked back in step 1 and you can suddenly feel overwhelmed. It's just building on your own compassion and letting go and not beating yourself so much, so that you can inspire the people, the team with you, because they need you. They need you to be there to check in with them where they are in the emotional space. So I feel it's important for leaders at this time to be self-aware, take care of themselves, and then be present for the team as well. Yeah.
It's so interesting you said that, and you spoke a little while back about chemistry. So you and I, obviously, Sandra and I didn't compare notes about what we're going to be seeing in the interview.
We
We
usually
usually
don't do
don't.
that, even in
We just kind of
workshops.
go
Just
with the
come
flow.
and go.
That's quite interesting because a lot of what you said is stuff that I wanted to share as well. And
Yeah,
thematically, it's very similar
super.
because the question really was about young leaders, right? And as I was thinking to your question around young leaders, a couple of things popped up in my head. Or what is the advice that we can give on how is it that we can help young leaders, new leaders in this space? I think a couple of things. The first thing I would say is that young leaders, I will also kind of take it to the generation that we're talking about, whether we call them the millennials or whatever else we call them, right? The reality is that many of them may not have seen big failures or crisis in their lives. Many of us are aware, we've seen, Simon Sinek also talk about the challenge of the reality of millennials and the power of millennials. And but one of the things that we're also aware of the fact is that many of them haven't dealt with failure. Many of them have had a pretty stable, pretty okay, good childhood because parents have been working in a space where the economies have been booming and stuff like that. They've got what they wanted, they've studied well, so on and so forth. So they haven't really experienced too much of a big crisis or a big failure ever. They certainly haven't experienced the recent GFC that happened, right? Not so recent, the last time we were hit with the global financial crisis, right? So they haven't gone through those moments. So this can be actually a bigger hit for some of those new young leaders. Going through this kind of it's like hitting a wall, running at 120 or driving at 120 and just kind of smacking into a wall. That's the feeling, and I can relate to that. But I think one of the strengths that this generation has and these new leaders have is that it's a generation of explorers, I feel, right? These millennials, they love exploring, right? They love trying out new things. They love discovering. They love experimenting. And are you seeing the theme here? These are exactly the words that I used. I said discover, experiment, refine. And that's what I feel, that this generation, their natural strength and inclination is to discover. Their natural inclination is to experiment. So I would really call on that strength of theirs, and I'd say, this is the time for you to really use that strength. But instead of just discovering outside, start discovering within, right? Because you like discovering, so start discovering. You like experimenting, so start experimenting. So that's the first thing I would tell them, that you've got a powerful strength that many people don't as young leaders, as millennials, which is that you love to discover, you love to experiment. And this is the time to do exactly those two things, discover and experiment, internal and external.
Yeah. Actually, for everyone, not just millennial. I think for all of us, that's a great lesson.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm saying more for them because that's a strength that comes so naturally to them. I mean, they like discovering, they like exploring, right? And the second thing I would tell them is that, and again, you spoke about that, is I feel you can only be inspiring as a leader if you're inspired yourself. So you've got to find that inspiration. And I think doing that discovery and that experimentation may help you find some inspiration. So find that inspiration and learn to become more inspiring in the way you communicate as a leader. I think leadership communication is a subject that's not spoken too much about. We all feel that leadership is about strategy, about approaches, about this, and which is all good. But how a leader communicates, especially in times of crisis, is really crucial. And that, how you inspire your people is really through what you say and how you say it. So how are we as young leaders, doing that? So those would be the two things that I would kind of add to what you said, that, work on your own strengths of discovering and experimenting, find your inspiration from within, and then start inspiring others in the way you communicate and the way you express and the way you connect.
Wow. Yeah, that's wonderful advice from both of you. And, just to kind of wrap up the interview process, if you have any last sound bites that you would like to leave our audience.
I was just thinking, what does the world need right now? And you have your usual problems, poverty, climate change, global warming. But the current situation is such, if you notice, that's all on pause right now. There's very little noise in, what's been the common themes of what the world needs to do to help. I think the biggest need right now is for everyone to focus on mental health. Is where are we in our mindsets, in our mind? Because if that goes, this crisis can even get really worse. I mean, we won't even know what can happen. And the only thing that can get out of the crisis, and it will come out, or the only thing that can help us move on faster, is our mindsets, our mental health. And it is a tough time. People are losing jobs. People are getting salary cuts. There is depression happening. Uh, Even people who have their jobs have the sense of anxiety that's larger than they usually have. So we are hearing a lot of people wanting stuff on mindsets and growth and success, and how do we build a resilient mind for what we need to do. And I feel it's very important for all of us, because I know number one thing that I do for myself is to keep working on my mind right now. Always be inspired, like Gatik said. Always continue to inspire myself. Look for the golden line. Look for gratitude. Look for curiosity. Look for what can happen. Because if I let that go, it's on thin threads right now. So I need to do things to strengthen it right now. And if there is one thing, one soundbite that I want to leave for the listeners, is just watch out for this precious asset of yours, to strengthen that right now, this time, to do things that you feel nourishes it, strengthen it, inspires it, and just let go of anything that's pulling it down. So focus on your mental health. That's your biggest asset to get us out of the situation.
Yeah. And if I can add one soundbite to that, I think the one thing that I'd want to share with the viewers is, or the one advice I'd give is the advice that I follow for myself. Because we're all going through uncertain times, and I wish there was advice for everybody on how to deal with it. But I think we're all figuring that out. I don't think even we have the answers. We're also figuring out. And we are going through the same stuff, right? We're not sitting here on a pedestal saying that, look, we figured it out. We're great at it. We lose our minds sometimes. I mean, I do. I know for myself. So this morning I lost it. I was not in a good space. I was quite upset, and I was angry, and I was anxious, and I was feeling disappointed and sad and all of that. And we all are going to go through this, especially in challenging times like this. And I think the one thing that I could say, which is a carry on to what Sandra said, because it is about building resilience. But the one mantra I would again leave with people is something that I follow for myself, that get upset. Don't blame yourself for getting upset. If you get upset, angry, sad, disappointed, get upset. If you want to cry, cry. Do that. Absolutely fine. No problem in doing that. Get upset. Give yourself permission to get upset and feel okay about getting upset. Don't blame yourself for getting upset, but don't stay upset. Don't stay upset. You're upset today about something bad that's happened. Okay. 2 hours you're upset, 3 hours you're upset, 5 hours you're upset, 8 hours you're upset. Great. Now let it go. Don't stick on to it. So give yourself permission to stay upset, to be in that mode of being upset, but don't continue to stay upset. Don't linger it on, right? That's the one thing. And, it's easier said than done. But I've been practicing, and it's helping me a little bit. So hopefully, if we all start practicing, it can help us all a little bit.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much for the, for the last note of positivity that both of you have added. And it was such a pleasure connecting with you today and talking to you today. Thank you so much for your time and so much of your energy this past 40 minutes. We are really honored that you came to our interview series and shared your thoughts with us. We will definitely keep in touch with you and have a healthy and safe time ahead of you.
Sure. Thank you, Sumita. It was just wonderful speaking to you. We enjoyed ourselves.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. I'll look forward to staying connected. Have a good day.
Yes.